Good afternoon, everyone. I pray and hoping that everybody's staying cool. Uh, Now I got that out of the way. I want to talk about this Tyler Perry allegedly being sued for SA. Uh, Shout out to Law and Crime. Let's get into it.
In the world of e-commerce, finding the perfect tech partner can be quite the conundrum. Most of one tree.
Breaking news coming into the Law and Crime. Actor, director, and film titan Tyler Perry is the latest celebrity to be accused of sexual assault. We got our hands on a new lawsuit filed Friday in Los Angeles Superior Court by an actor named Derek Dixon, who starred on one of Perry's hit shows. We want to break down this lawsuit and what it could mean for the movie mogul. We're on the case presented by Law and Crime. I'm Chris Stewart. So to start off, Dixon is suing Tyler Perry, the individual, as well as his production studio. That studio is called TPS Production Services, LLC. That stands for Tyler Perry Studios in Action, LLC. And he is looking for $260 million. Dixon, who portrayed a lead role in Perry's show called The Oval, is claiming 10 causes of action for the civil suit. Quid pro quo sexual harassment, work environment sexual harassment, workplace gender violence, violation of the Bain Act, the California law that protects against violation of someone's civil rights through force or coercion, sexual battery, sexual assault, negligent retention, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and retaliation. Let's get into this lawsuit. The complaint starts off by saying, quote, "This case arises from a sustained pattern of workplace sexual harassment, assault, and retaliation perpetrated by Tyler Perry, a powerful media mogul, against plaintiff Derek Dixon, a professional actor and screenwriter. Mr. Perry is an American actor, filmmaker, and playwright who has built in the film and television industry. Mr. Perry took his success and power and used his considerable influence in the entertainment industry to create a coercive, sexually exploitive dynamic with Mr. Dixon, initially promising him career advancement and creative opportunities, such as producing his pilot and casting him in his show, only to subject him to escalating sexual harassment, assault, and battery, and professional retaliation when Mr. Dixon did not reciprocate Mr. Perry's unwanted advances. These events occurred while Mr. Dixon was employed as a series regular on the Tyler Perry show, The Oval, while Mr. Perry held direct control over his employment, compensation, and creative opportunities. This lawsuit even compares Perry to some other infamous celebrities who have been called out.
See, now this some Diddy level mess. This is some of the same stuff that Diddy is being accused of.
For their behavior in the past. Quote, "Just like Harvey Weinstein, Bill Cosby, R. Kelly, Sean P. Diddy Combs, Kevin Spacey, Roger Ailes, and many others in the industry, Mr. Perry's success has led him to believe that money and influence can get him whatever he wants. That belief slowly transformed into the false idea that Mr. Perry can get whomever he wants." According to the lawsuit, Dixon was working as part of an event staff at a party that Perry was hosting in Atlanta when Perry noticed him and offered him the chance to audition for a part in one of his hit TV shows. Before we get back to this bombshell lawsuit involving Tyler Perry, I want to bring you a Law and Crime legal alert. If you received a Depo-Provera birth control shot and were later diagnosed with a brain or a spinal tumor called meningioma, you may be eligible for a lawsuit. Our partners at Morgan & Morgan are investigating claims that patients weren't properly warned about this risk. It is free to check, it takes just a few minutes, and you don't pay unless they win. So scan the QR code on your screen. You can also click the link in the description of this video or go to www.forthepeople.com/LCDEPO to see if you qualify. Dixon did have a small part on Perry's show called Ruthless. Then he returned to his event staff job, through which he was hired to work at Perry's parties in places like Los Angeles and Jackson Hole, Wyoming. As Dixon spent more time with Perry, he says that Perry would flirt with him through text messages, and his advances became more aggressive. Dixon claims that he was invited to Perry's Georgia home, where he and Perry drank together. When Perry told him he was too drunk to drive and offered him his guest bedroom, Dixon says he accepted. But then he claims that while he was asleep, Perry climbed into bed with him and tried to initiate sex. Dixon says he tried to distance himself from Perry, but he was offered a role on Perry's show, The Oval. The lawsuit then reads, Dixon did his best to tiptoe around Tyler Perry's sexual aggression while keeping on Mr. Perry's good side. Mr. Perry made it clear to Dixon that if Dixon ignored Perry or failed to engage with the
Again, some of the same stuff that Diddy is being accused of.
sexual innuendos, Dixon's character would die in the next season. Indeed, Dixon's character Dale was shot 4 times in the chest at the end of his first season on the Oval, and Perry always held this over Dixon's head, implying that Dale would survive if Dixon kept Perry, quote, happy. According to the complaint, Perry had made it clear to Dixon that he would kill characters in order to get an actor to be loyal or obedient. During the pandemic, Dixon says Perry convinced him to stay in one of the houses that was part of Tyler Perry's studios. Quote, in or around April of 2020, and while Dixon was living in the studio homes on set, Perry often coerced Dixon to drink alcohol and then get on the phone with Perry. Perry would frequently have someone drop off alcohol at Dixon's door. Perry would eventually turn these phone calls into sexually explicit rants. Perry would get frustrated with Dixon and tell Dixon that he was not giving Perry, quote, what he needs. Dixon's refusal to succumb to Perry's sexual advances caused Perry to be ever more frustrated. Eventually, Perry warned Dixon that if Dixon told his castmates about the harassment, Dixon would be opening himself up to lots of, quote, questions and foolishness, and demanded that Dixon not discuss any of their conversations with his castmates. Dixon's lawsuit also listed out some of the sexual commentary by Perry that Dixon claimed he experienced while filming The Oval in 2020. This is what he says that Perry told him. Dixon said that Perry told him that he liked being choked. That was after Dixon's character was choked by a cast member in a scene on The Oval. Perry also allegedly said, why do you twist your hips when you walk? How can I get a day of Dixon? When will you be thick again? I love how I feel right now, but I don't like being horny. I feel sorry for the first person who flirts with me, and I've been trying to put that energy somewhere else, but everything is sexual on this stuff. The lawsuit also contained numerous text messages from Perry to Dixon, some of which seem to have been sent when Perry was intoxicated, and if Dixon didn't respond according to the complaint, Perry would hound him. Dixon also claims the harassment turned physical. Quote, on multiple occasions, Mr. Perry sexually assaulted Mr. Dixon, including one instance where he forcibly pulled off Mr. Dixon's clothing, groped his buttocks.
Hey guys, wanna know why you should I'll do as you like to ask you this part of
Pulled off Mr. Dixon's clothing, groped his buttocks, and attempted to force himself on Dixon. Mr. Dixon told a drunken Perry no and attempted to remove Mr. Perry's hands, but Mr. Perry held tightly onto Dixon's wrists. Mr. Dixon was only able to escape after de-escalating the situation by abruptly changing the subject. The day after the assault, Mr. Perry called and texted Mr. Dixon relentlessly, saying, tried you, call me, and I really need to talk to you. Please call me as soon as you can. Finally, when Mr. Dixon answered Tyler Perry's call, Mr. Perry profusely apologized for the sexual assault while blaming it on other things. Perry continued, quote, he didn't know why he would do that. Maybe he was self-sabotaging. On the very same call where he apologized for the sexual assault against Dixon, Perry told Dixon, quote, and don't worry, we're going to do your show, referring to the pilot that Perry knew Mr. Dixon had desperately wanted to produce. Shortly thereafter, Mr. Dixon got a call from Perry's lawyer saying that Christmas had come early and that Dixon was getting a substantial raise and the show was greenlit. Perry's attorney explicitly warned Dixon not to tell any other actor on the show about Dixon's raise because no other actors were getting a raise, only Dixon. Later in the lawsuit, Dixon's lawyers write, in or around April 2022, before beginning to shoot the next season of The Oval, Perry called Dixon to discuss the June 2021 sexual assault. On the phone call, Perry lectured Dixon about how Dixon was overreacting to the sexual assault because of prior sexual assaults in Dixon's life. Perry said that there was a misunderstanding and miscommunication and that Dixon needed to say no stronger. In other words, Perry blamed Dixon for the sexual assault, claiming that Perry felt that Dixon's no was really a yes because Dixon did not say no strongly enough. Dixon says he finally, quote, woke up to the fact that Perry was allegedly stringing him along about working with him on his own show to keep him around to be sexually harassed. In 2024, Dixon reported Perry's alleged conduct to the EEOC, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission.
Should report it soon.
After reporting the sexual harassment, defendants, which is Perry and his studio, did not make any investigation into the complaint and did not take any steps to prevent further harassment from occurring. Because defendants took no action to prevent further assault or harassment, Dixon had to quit his job working on the last season of The Oval. Dixon did so even though he was under contract to finish filming and stood to make close to $400,000. Dixon did not want to be sexually harassed or be placed in danger of a sexual assault again. Defendant then retaliated against Dixon. Defendant told Dixon if he quits and told the other actors why he quit, he would be in breach of his contract. Defendants told Dixon that the only way out was to portray his departure from the show as a medical leave due to the emotional distress caused by the sexual harassment. Instead, defendant made the leave of absence unpaid and therefore terminated plaintiff's employment, causing Dixon additional loss of income and insult. But Tyler Perry is fighting back. In a statement, an attorney for Perry reportedly said the allegations are a quote scam. The attorney went on to say, "We are
You gotta
confident
show
these
proof
fabricated
that
claims of
Tyler.
harassment will fail." The attorney, who according to TMZ is identified as Matthew Boyd, said in full, "This is an individual who got close to Tyler Perry for what now appears to be nothing more than setting up a scam. But Tyler will not be shaken down, and we are confident these fabricated claims of harassment will fail." Joining us now is former federal prosecutor and president of West Coast Trial Lawyers, Nima Rahmani. Thank you for taking the time, as always, to be with us here on Law and Crime. I know we're still gathering information about exactly what Derek Dixon is accusing Tyler Perry of, but from what we know right now, how strong of a case does it seem that he has?
Chris, thanks for having me. Really breaking news today. Bombshell lawsuit against Tyler Perry. And information is coming in, but it does seem to be a strong case, at least in terms of the text messages. Sometimes in these sexual harassment cases, really the harassing behavior happens behind closed doors, and it's a he said, or he said, she said, or she said type situation. But text messages are fantastic, whether you're a prosecutor or a civil plaintiff's lawyer like I am, and looks like Dixon may have the receipts in this case.
Yeah, he's looking for $260 million. Even though Tyler Perry is a billionaire, that's still, in terms of net worth, just from what I've been reading online, $260 million is a lot of money. What does that tell you? And when someone sues someone, like in this instance, it's not a criminal case, and you're looking for a specific amount of money, what goes into determining what that is?
Yeah, lawyers can say all sorts of things. Really, ultimately, what matters is what they ask the jury for. So they can ask for less or more during closing arguments. So I usually put that aside. Can ask for less or more during closing arguments. So I usually put that aside. It gets a lot of good headlines, but I can't imagine this case being worth 9-figure. Sexual harassment is wrong. No one should be subject to it. And sometimes you get these nuclear verdicts or runaway juries, but I can't imagine a case like this going for that amount, even though, like I said, I don't condone any of this behavior.
No, and Derek Dixon, he has some text messages that that very much show. I mean, if Tyler Perry was someone who was supposed to be professionally his boss, that was going to open up career opportunities, it's not something that a boss would be allowed to say to an employee if that was their relationship. When it comes to this case, what's the bar that Derek Dixon would have to prove in court to get money from Tyler Perry?
So there's a few different claims, and they're all very serious. I'm not trying to downplay any of this. There's a sexual assault, right? Grabbing his buttocks, pulling his underwear down. That's pretty serious stuff. And they have sexual harassment. What I say is maybe the worst kind of sexual harassment, which is the quid pro quo. That means, hey, you know, if you perform sexually, I will help your career. And if you don't, I'm going to retaliate. And the argument here is that Dixon was going to be written off the show if he didn't comply with these sexual demands. So, you know, when you go to law school or you study employment law, that is the textbook quid pro quo sexual harassment. This for that. You give me something, you get a benefit. If you don't, you're going to be punished.
And Tyler Perry, and he is an institution in Hollywood. He's not the type of person, if you were an actor, that you would want, you wouldn't want to be on his bad list. Their relationship started around 2019. The most serious incident, according to what we know thus far, is that incident where he was wearing, said he was only having, Derek Dixon said he was staying at Tyler Perry's guest house in Atlanta. He was only wearing underwear, and Tyler Perry apparently pulled his underwear down. That was back in 2021. It's now 2025. What do you make of the timeline that it took for Derek Dixon to come forward with these allegations if they're true?
Well, that's one of the arguments the defense always makes, right? Is, well, if you were sexually assaulted or harassed, you know, why did you stay? Why didn't you report it right away? What I love as the plaintiff's lawyer is a contemporaneous report. So hopefully they have that. And I understand he's been getting therapy since 2020. So if he mentioned this to his therapist, that would certainly be helpful. In addition to the
Yeah, that would be helpful that he's in therapy.
Sometimes victims don't want to come forward, right? You're talking about a rich and famous individual. And look at what's happened. Perry's lawyer came out and said, this guy's lying. This is a shakedown. This is extortion, right? They always go after the victim. And we don't know if the allegations are true in this case or not, but very few sexual harassment cases are reported or litigated, and oftentimes the harassers, they get away with it. So, you know, if you read the lawsuit in this case, it's definitely meant for public consumption. It has those text messages embedded in, and it starts by comparing Tyler Perry to the Harvey Weinsteins and Diddy's of the world. And I'm not saying we've gotten that far, but those are serious sex trafficking, sexual assault allegations. Sexual harassment is wrong, and there is some sexual assault certainly alleged in this case, but sometimes people don't want to come forward because if you're a victim, you're going to have to really tell your story in a very, very public way.
And
What
then
is
you
interesting, though, is
getting
under California law,
re-victimized
you
again.
could have filed as a John Doe or a Jane Doe and chose not to, so I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, what does that tell you? Because in some ways, I could see if I was the defense to say Derek Dixon wants some notoriety. He's not a household name. He hasn't been in a lot of high-profile shows. He's in a couple Tyler Perry shows. But if you're the defense, and do you look at that he didn't file as a John Doe and say, look, this is proof that this was a shakedown, which is the term that they've used?
Look, it's interesting, obviously. That's not an argument that the defense can make, but really, and I've sued a lot of celebrities. I'm sitting here in Hollywood right now. I've represented some, but sued a lot more, so I've handled a lot of cases like this. Most of the time, the victims will come in, and when I explain what a lawsuit entails, they have pause, right? Like, oh my God, you know, people are going to come after me, they're going to drag me on social media, they're going to call me a liar, I'm never going to work again in Hollywood, right, after making an accusation like that. And I tell them, you know, there are certain circumstances where you can file as a Jane Doe or a John Doe, and most of the time, the victims do want to avail themselves of that protection. Now, sometimes the defense lawyers, they hate it because they think that it allows, you know, the victims to smear the defendants. Even in the Diddy case and the civil case, some of the judges have unmasked the victims.
Dusty Brown, get out of here, new troops. Can't you see these people are hankering?
Even in the Diddy case and the civil case, some of the judges have unmasked the victims, and obviously that's New York law and federal court, a little bit different, right? But in California, the protection is pretty broad, and most of the time the victims do want to proceed anonymously to at least protect themselves and their families.
When it comes to, and as someone who has represented people who have been in the seat that Derek Dixon sits right now, where they say they have been through something traumatic and they are going after a very strong and powerful person, you look at that $260 million number, the timing of this coming out. I mean, Tyler Perry has this show, it's a movie, Straw. It's the most popular Netflix movie of 2025 thus far, 50 million views in its second week. And then here's this lawsuit that comes out the defense might look at that and say, well, you're being opportunistic, but at the same time, I mean, if you are suing someone powerful, how much does the timing factor into when you unveil this lawsuit?
You know, there is a PR component as well. Litigation is about leverage, and I would be lying if I didn't consider that. I've come on Long Crime and I've talked about lawsuits, you know, I filed against Kanye or Lizzo or any number of celebrities, right? Because it can put pressure on them to settle. Now, sometimes they dig in their heels, and, you know, that's what judges and juries are for. But if you are trying to advocate on behalf of your client, whether it's a confidential settlement demand, a mediation, or litigating it in the court of public opinion, it matters, right? I mean, you look at the Justin Baldoni Blake Lively case. That case is almost as much outside the courtroom as it actually is in the courtroom, because, you know, everyone cares about the reputation in Hollywood, and whether it's cancel culture or just bad press, it can force a defendant to settle. So that's
Very
a
much
tool
so.
that you have to use if you're a plaintiff's attorney representing the
Council culture is a strong
How
weapon
likely is it
in
that the plaintiff's
entertainment.
attorneys had spoken with Tyler Perry's representation ahead of this news coming out today?
I think it's very likely. There's two types of lawyers, and I don't know this particular lawyer personally, but I can tell you that most of the time, a lawyer will send a demand, right? They'll send a demand, they'll enter into negotiations, they'll break down, and that's what will happen. I mean, in Cassie's case, there were, you know, pre-filing negotiations with Diddy's team, and they ran out of time. I personally don't like doing that. For me, if I'm going to take a case, I'm taking it because I believe that it's a righteous case and I'm going to file a lawsuit. I don't like to bargain if I'm going to fight. But again, it's a personal preference that I have. There's all sorts of problems with the, you know, pre-litigation demand. You know, they say that this is a shakedown, this is extortion, this isn't about justice. So personally, I like to file my lawsuit. I don't ask for a specific number. I say, you know what, I'm going to talk to the jury when the time is right. You know, because that helps, you know, avoid the defense's argument that this person's asking for $200 million and, you know, he's never made, you know, more than $200,000 in his entire life. I think he's saying the loss of earnings here is $400,000, you know, where you're getting at this number is astronomical. So, you know, you avoid some of that bad press and that backlash by just filing your lawsuit and moving the case forward.
And with that, considering Dixon is not, he's not a millionaire, he's certainly not in the same financial category as Tyler Perry. How much money does it cost him to keep this going? Tyler Perry wants to fight back.
Well, these cases, we handle our firm on a contingency fee basis, which means we're not getting paid hourly, we get a percentage. So if we take a case, we believe that we can win and we can collect. So most lawyers who handle these cases work on that basis. Some of them will charge
Facts.
hourly. The reason we do this is that way we sort of have skin in the game and we'll work side by side.
Some will charge. Some lawyers will indeed charge by the hour, and then there's some lawyers that will take a percentage. Hold on.
So because you're right, it can be very, very expensive to pay lawyers.
Very.
So again, talking about other cases that are happening right now, my estimate for Diddy's daily burn, you know, to litigate his case, it's probably $100,000 a day, somewhere in that number or close to it. So it can be very, very expensive to try a case. That's why, unless you have significant financial means, many of the victims, they do decide, you know what, let me hire a lawyer, let me pay them a percentage, that way I'm not out of pocket in this case.
Because then I think, and I was thinking about Diddy because he is facing all those civil lawsuits as well, and even if some of those lawsuits don't hold up, it still costs money to have an attorney argue on your behalf in court. On
Fact.
Tyler Perry's side, and I'm sure he has he probably has an entire law firm at his disposal with the money he has, but financially, from his side of this, what does the cost look like in pushing back? And you also wonder, I don't know this for sure, but if this is
This is the evolution of Harry, the rich wallet. Let's see how it redefines your essentials. Elegantly minimal.
I don't know this for sure, but if this is, you know, if there's more lawsuits that come forward and you have people who say that there were these types of allegations, that hasn't happened, but I think in Diddy's case, you saw one after another come forward. Financially for Tyler Perry, what could this look like?
Well, it can look bad. So obviously, like you said, Chris, I expect that Tyler Perry has a small army of lawyers on retainer, and there's going to be individuals that have experience handling employment cases some big firm here in Los Angeles or in Georgia, where Tyler Perry lives, even though the lawsuit's been filed here. So, when you're talking about other victims, though, that is a real concern. And again, I'm not saying these allegations are true, but if they are, Chris, oftentimes abusers abuse more than one victim, right? Obviously, in the Diddy case, right, everyone came out, almost 100 victims. But even in Weinstein, right, that's what Me Too is all about. It's not just me. There's other people that were affected and were harassed. So if the allegations are true and I were Tyler Perry, I would have big concerns that, other people are going to come forward and it might be a snowball pit effect.
And just reading through the text messages that we have just read within the last hour of recording this, I mean, they're pretty damning. Even if the allegations are true, to see what Tyler Perry was texting someone who he had promised jobs to, like, it changes the way someone may view Tyler Perry if you're a fan of his work.
Yeah,
what type of conversations would his legal team have if it comes to settling this case or continuing forward and fighting it, knowing that more text messages
and knowing Tyler, he probably just gonna
I
settle.
would have serious concerns if Tyler Perry is indeed sending text messages talking about wanting to expletive, people that are subordinates, right? That is what you are not supposed to do. And then everyone's supposed to go through sexual harassment training in California, but like, as someone that has done defense work in the past, I mean, I would cringe as a plaintiff's lawyer, victim's lawyer. I'm like, wow, this is smoking gun evidence. It's bad. You can't be talking to your employees or people that are under your supervision about sex. You can't be grabbing them. I mean, this is some of the worst employment conduct that can happen aside from there being actual penetration. So he's got pretty significant exposure. If these texts are real, I would be very concerned about what Tyler Perry and his defense team.
Because then on the flip side, if you settle this, it doesn't go away. Then it's like, because I think in Diddy's case with Cassie, he settles that lawsuit, and then suddenly everybody says, well, he actually did this. There was obviously evidence with the tape in LA in his situation, but what are the concerns if your client has to settle in hopes that it goes away, knowing that just the headline that you settled the lawsuit is now out in the public?
Yeah, that's when I prepare my clients for. Like I said, if there's a settlement, I think there's a payoff and that it was righteous. So sometimes these defendants, they care about their reputation more than the money. They make you go get a judgment. So there is the very real possibility that, this lawyer and his client are going to have to go all the way, because it's not about, millions of dollars for Tyler Perry. It's about his reputation, and he might just push this case all the way to trial. Clear his name, right? I mean, that's what happened in Johnny Depp Amber Heard, right? It was about clearing Johnny Depp's name, or, Justin Baldoni, Blake Lively. It's about their name. I don't think Blake Lively needs money from Justin Baldoni, right? Her and Ryan Reynolds are reportedly worth $1 billion. But I think they're trying to send a message, and they want to make sure that their reputation is pristine in Hollywood.
Knowing that this lawsuit just dropped within the last hour, what does the timeline look like until this? If he wanted to take this to trial, how long could that be away?
So this case is in federal court in the Central District in Los Angeles, which tends to move a little bit faster than state court. State courts here are notoriously back.
Okay, he filed this in LA.
We may get a trial in 2026, so that's pretty fast. It's certainly not going to happen anytime soon. The parties have to engage in discovery, so that means written questions back and forth that have to be answered under penalty of perjury. There's depositions, which is a recorded interview under oath. So if we get a trial, in early or mid 2026, that's pretty fast for the civil justice system. But we're probably looking at later in 2026 if I were guessing.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see just how this story, over someone who is beloved by so many people, how that impacts the public perception. You think of Derek Dixon, what he allegedly went through as well. Just reading those text messages is pretty shocking. Nima Rahmani, thank you as always for taking the time to be with us.
And we're done.